to UUs. One stereotype of UUs is that they are highly educated. This can be a positive stereotype if it means we can imagine that UUs are thinkers, aware of the world around them and challenging the status quo, smarter than the average bear. It can also be a negative stereotype if it carries the baggage of intellectual elitism, the notion that educated people are bookish or snobbish or unkind to people they perceive as somehow mentally inferior to themselves. I hope that this sort of stereotype is unfair and inaccurate. But as a UU who went to an academic magnet school, a small independent liberal arts college, and did graduate work at a well-regarded major university, I will never know, unless reassured by people who do not suffer from such wretched excesses of education. Aside from being perceived as clever or snobbish or both, there's another hazard of being a thinker. The more we think and study and plumb ever greater depths of wisdom, the more we risk becoming entirely separate from anything that is outside our heads. A key aspect of yoga, as it was practiced in early Eastern faith traditions, was about meditation and knowledge and devotion and purity of thought. In other words, it was about being in your head. Now, you might think of yoga as being the art of tying yourself up into pretzel knots. That's the aspect of yoga that gets the most press coverage. Yoga asana, which is the technical term for the whole pretzel knot thing, was originally defined as a practice of holding a still, seated pose for an extended period of time. The different stretches and poses are really about helping you get into a state of body and mind where you can be comfortable sitting in meditation for hours. In other words, arrange your body in such a way that you can ignore it while you hang out in your head. But the real goal of all that getting into your head was actually to get out of it. That is to say, to transcend your head, and the rest of you as well, and to tap into something vastly greater, a pure light of consciousness that encompasses everything and everyone. Since we UUs love to be in our heads, let's see if we can get our heads around this concept by building it up from some UU concepts. UUs have a Unitarian belief, the idea that God is one entity, which is counterpoint to the Trinitarian belief of a three-part God. We also have a Universalist belief that salvation, eternal life, or ultimate perfection, or whatever you want to call it, is promised to everyone. So we get it about oneness and inclusiveness. The Eastern philosophy of non-dualism takes these unifying notions another step further, from the idea of one universally forgiving God into the idea simply of one. There is one perfect, pure light of consciousness that encompasses all that is. Pure joy and bliss come when you are fully aware of the oneness. It's not actually possible to be separate from it, only to be unable to perceive that you are a part of it. As an aside, if you have any experience with some of the more modern Protestant traditions, this may actually sound familiar. Heaven, in modern Christian interpretation, is a connection to God, and hell is separation from God. Similar idea, different details. In the philosophy of non-dualism, people and objects, and even conceptual opposites, are all simply manifestations of the absolute, which is both immanent and transcendent. Like the Force in the movie Star Wars, this pure light of being surrounds us and penetrates us and binds the universe together. To this way of thinking, there is no separation between you and me that matters. And for followers of many Eastern faith traditions, the ultimate spiritual achievement is to become fully aware of the oneness, to escape their bodies and their heads entirely and be enveloped in that pure light of being. Perhaps you've heard the one about the monk who visits the hot dog vendor and says, "Make me one with everything." Meanwhile, back here in the Western world, most of us do not sit silently still for hours and hours hoping to become one with the absolute. But we do spend an awful lot of time thinking, discussing, analyzing, processing, and generally using our heads. For many of us, sitting at a desk or a computer doing brain work for 8 or more hours a day is not unusual. Much of this endless brain work is neither visibly productive nor spiritually uplifting. It is, however, keeping us in our heads, potentially at the expense of our bodies, our hearts, and the world around us. In a manner of speaking, we are on a yoga mat, isolated from the world for all the wrong reasons, seeking enlightenment not through meditation, but through Google searches. We are hiding spiritual vulnerability behind intellectual skepticism. We are missing pieces of everyday life and not gaining any of the benefits of retreat from it. We seek oneness, but cultivate separation, probably without even realizing we're doing it. Karma, I submit to you, is the solution to the problem of being stuck in our heads. Even if your Unitarian Universalist overeducation didn't include studies of Hinduism or Buddhism, you're probably at least somewhat familiar with karma. Chalk up another point for John and Yoko. But what do you think karma means? This is not a rhetorical question. Rob! Floor recognizes the gentleman in the back.
I think karma means approximately the idea of an ethical or moral balance in the universe, that what we put into the universe returns to us in some form or another.
Okay. Anybody else?
It's the work or spiritual price you pay for living in the world.
Spiritual price you pay for living in the world. It's a good one, okay? Anything else? Anybody? Are you shy and quiet today?
What goes around comes around.
I think karma is different in different people, and sometimes you say, well, or bad karma, or, bad vibes. And then there are people you meet and the that it just flows to you. You feel safe, and you almost immediately know this person can be a friend. The word karma, stripped of all its connotations, simply means action. Karma means getting off your yoga mat and into the world. Karma is what happens when we've done our thinking and our studying and our analyzing, chosen a course of action, and gotten started. All karma is action, but not all action is karma. Karmic action carries intention. Most of us, at one time or another, have found ourselves in the situation of being busy but not really doing anything, or taking an action for its own sake without putting very much thought into it. Karma is deliberate and consequential. When you act in a karmic way, you expect some particular outcome. And this is where the connotations of karma come from. The way the word works in practical language, karma describes both the action itself and the object or intent of the action. Thus, an action taken with good intent creates good karma, and an action undertaken with bad intent creates bad karma. Because of the way many Eastern faith traditions have imagined how karma works, or how reincarnation works rather, karma is sometimes seen in the context of whole lives or large chunks of lives. So if your current circumstances are unpleasant, they're explained by bad karma. You have previously done something, either earlier in this life or in some prior life, to deserve your present plight. Or you lived such a good, upstanding, positive previous life as a sickly peasant that this time around you've been born into wealth and power. If you're in miserable circumstances now, the idea of working your whole life to build up enough good karma to have better luck in a future life seems discouraging at best and crazy at worst. Yet, people, even those who seem to have barely anything to give, are often generous, kind, honest, hardworking, and well-meaning. People serve when there is little incentive to do so. People act in karmic ways all the time, even the ones who've never heard the word karma. Why is that? Maybe it's obvious. Maybe it's not. Or maybe we have an ancient understanding of this stuff at the cellular level. Karma is circular, so let's circle back around to the idea of non-dualism. The concept of non-dualism ties everything together. No, more than that, It simply rejects the idea that anything was ever apart. Every person, animal, vegetable, and mineral is just a manifestation of one perfect universal being. And if you accept that notion and consider how you might live your life in harmony with it, suddenly karma starts to make all kinds of sense. If you and your neighbor, or you and your dog, or you and your garden, or you and your worst enemy are simply manifestations of one absolute, then every time you ignore your neighbor, you're ignoring yourself. Every time you kick your dog, you're kicking yourself. Every time you nurture your garden, you're nurturing yourself. Every time you forgive your enemy, you're forgiving yourself. And when you hide on your proverbial yoga mat, caught in your head, turning a problem over and over, or searching endlessly for some elusive truth, you're missing what's right in front of you. Your head is attached to your body. Your body contains your heart. Your heart is part of life's heart, and life's heart is all there is. Light and darkness, satisfaction and want, good and bad, giving and receiving, and these are not opposites. They are manifestations of the absolute. They are around you and within you, immanent and transcendent, in immediate and desperate need of your full awareness and intentional participation. So how will you participate? What intentional action can you take today to get off the mat and into the world? What have you been thinking about, or dreaming about, or denying yourself for a day, or a year, or a lifetime? Is there a neighbor who needs helping? A dog that needs walking? A garden that needs tending? An enemy who needs forgiving? A gentle being reflected in your own mirror who needs loving? If everything is connected, then even the things you do for yourself, maybe especially the things you do for yourself, build good karma too. Instant karma, according to John and Yoko, is about the highest and most purely positive form of immediate gratification. When you do the right thing, whether for yourself or for someone else, when you act in a mindful way with the intention to make the world better, the positive feedback loop engages instantly. And if there is no separation between us, it's all the more essential that we get going as soon as possible. Right now, our world is full of injustice and danger and suffering, and also full of love and possibility and hope. We could choose to engage it sometime in the indeterminate future. Surely Dr. King had plans for April 5th, and John Lennon for December 9th. But I can promise that you will not lie on your deathbed wishing you had spent more time on your yoga mat, in your head, sitting at your desk, racking your brain, going back over the facts and figures just one more time before taking action. If life came with appropriately posted signs, placards, and crew member instructions, everything you see would reflect the same warning as your car mirror. Objects, people, plants and animals, rocks, rivers, and stars are closer than they appear. You are as insignificant as a raindrop and as vast as an ocean. You are as close as a kiss and as distant as a star. You are as black as the inside of an inkwell and as bright as the sun. You are the eye of a newt and the eye of a hurricane. All of these things are part of you, and you are part of them. And knowing this about yourself, you could choose to be lost in thought or frozen in terror. Or you could choose to get off your mat and into the world. Whatever you do, do it with clear intention. Because one way or another, instant karma is going to get you. Karma's going to get you. Without you right away. You better get yourself together. Pretty soon you're gonna dead. What in the world you thinking of? Back in the days of love. you. It'll look you right in the face. Better get yourself to get a job and join the human race. How in the world you gonna see that with fools like me? Who on earth you think you are? A superstar? Well, like you are. So we all shine on like the moon and the stars and the sun. So we all shine on. Everyone, come on. This power's gonna get you. It'll knock you off your feet. Gotta recognize your brothers. Everyone you need. Why in the world are we here? Surely not to live in pain and fear. Why on earth were you there? When you're everywhere, come and get your share. We all shine on like the moon and the stars and the sun. We all shine on and on and on. Anybody yet? I don't see you dancing in the aisle. We all shine on like the moon and the stars and the sun. And we all shine on and on and on. And we all shine on like the moon and the stars and the sun. And we all shine on like the moon and the stars and the sun. And we all shine on like the moon and the stars and the sun.
Shine on.
Nicely done.
Any kids here, maybe jump all around.
With all this singing and shouting and shining, it may be just as well that we didn't light a real fire lest we burn the place down. Thank you for singing and shining with me today. And now if Mark would kindly extinguish the chalice, and when Mark sits down, he'll come finally listen reading.